Hi guys, it's me Chazza HD and welcome to tonight's basically weekend review of the 2023 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend, and pretty much the race, of course, that happened yesterday. Wasn't the best Grand Prix, unfortunately. We didn't get exactly, the type of race that we had obviously in 2021 around this circuit, and 2022 where we had, very controversial, classic, infamous, famous, whatever you want to call it, races in Jeddah. And it just in the end became very boring, and it was it got to the point once, especially Max Verstappen in the very quick, of course, Red Bull car made his way up to second. We were pretty much just waiting for the end of the Grand Prix, and obviously that's not how we want F1 races to be, but that is how it was yesterday in Jeddah. But not as many talking points I was hoping for this stream today, but there are still a couple, and as you can see in the title of this stream, first topic of tonight's stream is going to be just how dominant Red Bull truly were in the last 30 laps of the race, where they really showed just how incredibly strong they are compared to the rest of the field, and I'll kind of get into what that means, for the rest of the season. And then also I'll be getting into the whole Fernando Alonso penalty situation, what he was penalised for, and how that penalty was eventually overturned. Overturned, I think, 3 hours or 3.5 hours after the race finished. So a bit annoying, I have to say, at the incredible long wait we had to see, whether Alonso was absolutely not going to be on the podium or was. Really poor from the FIA, and we'll get into some of that later on. And another thing to mention is that when I go through the Red Bull topic, I will be recording that part of the stream to upload as a shorter video that will be uploaded tomorrow on the channel for people that maybe can't make tonight or not much of tonight's stream. So, just giving you a pre-warning for that, guys. But before we get into all of that stuff, let's just remind ourselves of what happened in the race yesterday. So here is the race result. Sergio Perez winning the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It's his 5th win in Formula 1, from Max Verstappen in second. Fernando Alonso third. That is the second race in a row where Alonso's been on the podium, his 100th podium in Formula 1. And that's the first time Fernando has had 2 podiums in a row, in consecutive races, of course, since 2013. So it just shows you how long it has been since Fernando has had a competent car to drive. George Russell finished in 4th place, with Hamilton 5th. Mercedes, to be honest, getting a pretty decent result out of the Grand Prix, with Carlos Sainz in 6th, Charles Leclerc in P7. Esteban Ocon finished in 8th, with Pierre Gasly in 9th and Kevin Magnussen in P10. The rest of the field: Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Zhou, De Vries, Piastri, Sargent, Norris and Bottas. The drivers finishing the race but not scoring a point. And your 2 retirements: Alex Albon and Lance Stroll. And we'll just quickly go through the current championship standings. Max Verstappen does lead by 1 point from Sergio Perez. The reason he leads by 1 point is because, of course, on the final lap yesterday in Jeddah, a bit to the annoyance of Perez, Max took the fastest lap of the race, and obviously a point you get for the fastest lap. So Perez is a point behind in second. Alonso third, only 14 points off Max, but I'm pretty sure that'll grow out to about 30 or 40 points by the time we get properly into the European season in a couple months from now. And then Carlos Sainz is in 4th place, ahead of Lewis Hamilton, only because Carlos has had a better best race result this season. Carlos's best race result this season being P4. Hamilton has had 2 5th place finishes. Russell is in 6th in the championship, with Lance Stroll in 7th. Of course, he was going to head for a few points, but he had his ERS failure, it turns out it was. For him, Charles Leclerc, 8th place in the championship, and already is almost 40 points behind Verstappen after 2 races. And yeah, the championship is clearly over, at least for him. And I think pretty much, as we'll get into when we get into the Red Bull topic, it's pretty much over for everybody else. And Valtteri Bottas still in 9th, with Esteban Ocon now up into the top 10. And then on the constructors' side, Red Bull, look how far clear they are already. 87 points they're on, and they are 49 points clear of Aston Martin in 2nd and Mercedes in 3rd. Of course, Aston Martin and Mercedes level on points. And I have to say with Mercedes, I don't think they've started the season that bad, to be honest. I mean, I know their car is not where they want it to be. It's still, very slow compared to where they are aiming to be in 2023. But, Aston Martin are quite clearly faster than them. So for them to be level on points with Aston Martin in the championship after 2 races is still a pretty decent effort, and shows that their production during a race weekend is still really good, despite not having, obviously, a really good car. Ferrari are in 4th place in the championship, and to be honest, I don't think Ferrari are probably going to raise any higher than that in the 2023 season. Alpine are up to 5th, only 18 points off Ferrari, and Alpine, maybe, later this season might actually close in on the Ferrari team. That could be a possibility. Alfa Romeo are down to 6th. Haas F1 are up to 7th, after, of course, Magnussen scored a point yesterday. And Williams now down to 8th. AlphaTauri still 9th. Tsunoda has had 2 11th place finishes in a row and has been so close twice to a points finish, but in Bahrain was just not quick enough to get past Albon before the end. And then in Jeddah yesterday, really Magnussen was just too quick and pulled off a brilliant move to snatch that final point. And McLaren, of course, are last in the championship, and McLaren are likely to be there probably for the next 6 weeks or so. But yeah, those are the race results and the championship standings. And like I said, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix yesterday wasn't quite as exciting as it really could have been. Up until the safety car, it was pretty decent, I thought. We had plenty of racing, plenty of close racing throughout the field. But yeah, I think the safety car really ruined the race, because we would have got probably a bit more excitement with Max having to work just a bit harder to come through the field and, finish 2nd. Of course, he would eventually finish in 2nd anyway, even if there wasn't a safety car. But yeah, it would have been a bit more interesting. And Ferrari themselves would have been a bit more in the race than they were after the safety car. It would have been more interesting to see Hamilton progressing on the softer and faster tyres towards the end, because it definitely helped him quite a bit with the safety car coming out. But and one other thing I've got to say before we get properly started here, and I think other people probably said this as well online, why was there a safety car yesterday? If you go and look where Lance Stroll's car was, it was almost completely behind the barriers. Why did they throw a safety car out? I think I have seen from someone on Twitter saying that the reason the FIA put out the safety car was because their own GPS system said that Lance was on track, even though if you clearly watched the broadcast, you would see that Lance was pretty much as far away from the circuit as you could be. And I have to say, I was pretty surprised the safety car came out. I thought it would be at worst as a virtual safety car. So, yeah, harkening back to the Michael Massey days with overreactions on throwing out, safety cars and stuff like that for things that, or incidents that, you just don't require it. Yeah, that was really disappointing, because like I said, I think it did, that safety car, ruin the race. And we have seen it quite a few times, especially in the last few years, where a mid-race safety car does kind of ruin the flow of the race and prevent us from seeing storylines that, you know, start to develop in the first 20 laps or so. It prevents us from seeing those properly and fully play out. So yeah, it's disappointing that the safety car was thrown up for that, but it was, and sadly, yeah, we had a pretty boring race after that, and the only excitement was Magnussen, Tsunoda, and what was it, Sargent, the two McLarens, and Joe having a bit of a ding dong as well, and I think Nico Hulkenberg as well was kind of in that. So yeah, wasn't a great end to the race. But like I said, the main two topics tonight, how Red Bull just destroyed everyone yesterday, and then we'll get into the Fernando Alonso penalty stuff. Again, I am going to be recording the Red Bull topic I am about to do, so just warning you guys about that. And of course, if anyone, you know, isn't able to catch the full piece I'm about to do on Red Bull, then you can just catch it tomorrow in a shorter form at, it'll probably be uploaded at like, I don't know, 12:30 p.m. UK time, something like that. So yeah, make sure to go check that out when it is uploaded, again, if you can't check it out here. But I think I'll just get straight into it. So guys, yesterday, Red Bull, of course, absolutely dominated the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and once they got into a 1-2 position, obliterated everyone in Jeddah. Their pace was truly incredible, and they have proven that for the rest of 2023, I mean, and we saw this in Bahrain as well, they are going to be so hard to stop, and they very could, or not very could, they very well could win every single race in 2023. The only thing at the minute really holding them back is possible reliability trouble. But let's get into just why I believe that Red Bull could win every race this season with the type of pace they've got. And what we're going to get into is the average pace of all of the teams from when the safety car came in, just before the midway point of the race, until the end of the race. So from about, I think, lap 21 until lap 50. And yeah, it is not good data, put it that way, if you're a Ferrari fan, Mercedes fan, Aston Martin fan, or a fan of any of the other teams, this type of data. Sergio Perez, from lap 21 until lap 50, was on average 0.7 of a second quicker than Fernando Alonso. And I have to say, at the time, it was very surprising just the amount of pace that Perez had in comparison to Alonso, because in the first stint of the race, it was pretty close between Perez and Alonso. Even when Perez repassed Alonso for the lead, Fernando was still sticking with him quite closely. So, incredible speed compared to the Aston Martin. Mercedes, on average, about a second off. Just, yeah, incredible the amount of lap time they had over Mercedes. And it's also incredible, as I'm sure you guys would have known if you watched the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, just how much faster in a straight line the Red Bull was with DRS compared to the Mercedes without DRS. It was absolutely terrifying to see the speed difference. And I think even David Croft in Sky Commentary said it was like watching F1 versus F2. And yeah, it kind of was like that. And Ferrari were 1.2 seconds off on average from lap 21 to lap 50. And yeah, Ferrari's race pace was absolutely horrendous compared to Red Bull and even Aston Martin and Mercedes, considering Ferrari were still pretty or decently competitive in qualifying, but the pace drop off in the race was just incredible. But with Red Bull, why are this team just so quick right now? Well, we saw last season that, and they've carried over really the strengths of the car from last season, where they've got a design that aerodynamically is just so efficient. They're able to be still very quick down the straights. They're also able, with the DRS open, to get more speed, seemingly, than other cars can with the DRS open. But despite it being a slippery car in a straight line, it provides immense amount of downforce, and that's why this car at the minute just doesn't have any weaknesses. There's nothing you can really do at the minute to stop Red Bull. It's not like maybe Mercedes, say, back in their dominance period of 2014-15, where you could say, well, the downforce of that Mercedes car maybe isn't the absolute best on the grid, or maybe it's not miles clear of the rest of the field like their engine was at the time. With this Red Bull car, it's similar to the Mercedes car of 2020, where there are no weaknesses and they are miles clear in pretty much every area. Downforce, straight line speed really, especially with their aero design, and also looking after their tyres, which contributes to the brilliant race pace that Red Bull has, which is why the first two races of this season, they have dominated 2023 so much. But with the rival teams, I think a big reason why Red Bull could win every race this season is because the rival teams are not exactly in great positions right now. I mean, if we look at Ferrari, in qualifying trim, they're not that bad. In Bahrain, they maybe could have contended for pole position. And even in Saudi Arabia, despite a not so great lap from Perez, Leclerc wasn't, a million miles off in the end. But the drop-off that Ferrari have from qualifying to the race is monumental. It's the worst it's been from this team in a while. I know they've had race pace issues in the past. Obviously, last season, they had this quite a bit. Even a few years ago in 2019, they had issues where they'd be so quick in qualifying and then in the race they would drop off with their pace quite a bit. But to be, only a tenth of a second slower than Perez with Leclerc in qualifying, and then be at best 1.2 seconds on average slower than Perez for a 30-lap period until the end of the race, is incredibly alarming from the Ferrari team. And yeah, those race pace woes from 2022, not only have they not gone away, they're even worse now than they were last season. So yeah, Ferrari are in a really bad spot. And even if Ferrari, and fix those tyre issues and, have maybe in the second half of the season, if they really improve this car, much better race pace. Yes, they do have a very strong power unit and their straight line speed is very good and is, I guess, comparable to Red Bull. But this Ferrari engine is just so unreliable. I mean, how many new power unit elements have Ferrari taken on just in 2 races? Leclerc had a 10th-place grid penalty already in Saudi Arabia for a third control electronics unit. That is incredibly poor reliability. And I think even, new power unit elements, I think, for Leclerc with to do with other things as well. Energy store. I think even, was it with Carlos Sainz possibly, a new power unit completely. So even though Ferrari have got the power maybe to compete with Red Bull with their straight line speed, their engine is very unreliable. I mean, Red Bull, they've got their reliability concerns as well, but Ferraris are way worse. So, like I said, even if they fix their tyre issues and their race pace improves, they're still not very reliable to bet on actually winning a race this season. And they could legitimately, Ferrari, go the entire season without winning a Grand Prix. And remember, they haven't won a race since July 2022 at the Austrian Grand Prix. So that drought is, I think, going to continue for quite a while. And then you go on to the Mercedes team. Now, Mercedes this season, obviously their car is not good enough. Aerodynamically, it is miles off the Red Bull. And couple that with the straight line speed deficit they've got to Red Bull, which is quite big. That's why they are, at the minute, about a second a lap off the pace. I would say definitely in race pace terms, and probably they will be at the minute or close to that in qualifying terms as well. I will say, though, they have done pretty well in the races so far. We're still picking up good points. I mean, they are level with Aston Martin on points in the championship. Aston Martin obviously in second. But with Mercedes, we can't look at them as possible race-winning contenders, really, until they bring this new, what is essentially going to be a B-spec car, and hope that that new car improves their performance by, say, 3/4 of a second. That's the type of improvement they need to even be competitive, even to a, certain degree, not a massive degree, compared to Red Bull. So with Mercedes, we just have to wait and see. But it's going to take them quite a while, really, to get back to contending for race wins. And Mercedes have even come out and said, when it comes to bringing a new car concept with their, side pod and that they are looking more long-term rather than just this season. So they're already thinking pretty much at this point about 2024, and they should be. But that thinking may see them not win a race in 2023. And the only other team that could stop Red Bull, and I'd say the second best team right now, and the team with the second best car right now in Formula One, is Aston Martin. But the Aston Martin car, despite being aerodynamically very good, lots of grip, great tyre management, those aren't issues at all, and they share those great strengths with Red Bull. They have quite a lack of straight line speed, which they can't really do anything about because they've got the Mercedes power unit. And we've seen in the last year or so, the Mercedes power unit is quite less powerful than, say, the Ferrari or the Red Bull powertrain cars, obviously the Renault power unit as well. So that's going to be quite an issue for Aston Martin this season, because if you look at the calendar, yeah, we've got certain races where power won't matter that much, but most of the races on the calendar, you're going to need a good donkey in the back, if you know what I mean, if you're going to, say, win a race, especially compared to Red Bull, who have got the complete package. So maybe Aston Martin may be able to contend for a victory at places like Monaco, Barcelona, Hungary, Singapore, circuits like that where power doesn't really matter at all. But if they can't get the job done there, then even though they have quite a bit more time in the wind tunnel this season, I don't really see, unless Red Bull have their reliability troubles, which could happen. I mean, we saw obviously with Max Verstappen having a drive shaft failure in qualifying in Saudi Arabia. It is possible, but if that doesn't happen, it is just very, very hard to see whether, or see that, Red Bull are not going to, or see a team, if I'm trying to put this in a better way, it's very hard to see a team other than Red Bull at the minute for the entirety of 2023 winning a Grand Prix. Another piece of data that definitely adds to the possibility of Red Bull winning every race this season is this. Now, this is not from the race. This is from qualifying, the top speeds by team in the main speed trap. Sergio Perez, the quickest, and this is obviously the team-by-team ranking. You can see Ferrari not doing that bad, only 5 kilometers an hour slower in the speed trap. In Bahrain, I think Ferrari were just a tad quicker. So, again, like I said earlier, they are comparable. But look at Mercedes and Aston Martin. Mercedes almost 8 kilometers an hour slower. Aston Martin about 10 kilometers an hour slower. And like I said with Aston Martin a moment ago, with the type of circuits we've got on the calendar, you can't afford to be giving away 10 kilometers an hour in straight line speed if you have theoretically got a car that has as much grip as the Red Bull. So that is the main issue for the other teams. Now, let me know, of course, guys, in the comment section down below, do you think Red Bull will win every race this season? If you do, obviously let me know why. If they, say win every race but one, let me know what race they don't win. Be very curious, of course, to hear what you guys have to say. in terms of my view, it's obviously very hard to say because we're at race 2 of the season, but given their speed and given how, even though the cars of 2023 so far have not been that reliable in the first 2 races, given how quick they are compared to the other teams and how they can really just manage things and manage their car quite easily out front, it is very possible. It is very, very possible that Red Bull win every race this season. I mean, the closest team in recent history to come close to doing that was Mercedes in 2016. And the only reason they didn't win every race that year was because in Spain, both drivers crashed into each other. And then in Malaysia, of course, Hamilton had an engine failure. That's how close it was for Mercedes to get every race of 2016 won. So, yeah, it's going to be a very close run thing. And I think for sure it is a possibility. But it's hard for me to say at the minute that Red Bull will absolutely win maybe every race, or they absolutely won't win every race in 2023. But let me, guys, know in the comments. Do you think Red Bull will win every race this season? Yes or no? And just, share your thoughts on the incredible performance of this Red Bull car. Until my next video, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye. There you go, guys. That is that topic done. And yeah, let me know, guys, in the live chat with Red Bull. Yeah. Do you think they can win every race this season? Like I said, I think it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And I think it's, I think they will be very close to doing it. But it's hard at this point of the season to say whether they absolutely will or will not. I think we need to see a few more races. Because, I mean, the 2 tracks we've been to so far are kind of similar. They're kind of like, really kind of like power circuits mostly. We haven't been to like a proper high downforce track. Obviously, that'll be coming up in probably, 12 weeks or 10 to 12 weeks from now when we get to, say, Monaco, Barcelona, places like that. But, yeah, it's definitely very, very possible. But let me know in the live chat whether you think they can win every race this season. But I just want to go back to this and the average pace of the team. So, yeah, Perez, on average, 7/10 of a second quicker than Aston Martin. Ferrari's race pace, was very poor in those last, basically, 30 laps. They were half a second quicker than Alpine, which I have to say, I mean, it's not bad from Ferrari. But, I mean, if you look at last year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, Ferrari were a second a lap, at least, quicker than Alpine, if not probably 1.2, 1.3 seconds a lap quicker. So a massive drop-off in lap time for the Ferrari team there. And yeah, half a second a lap they were losing to Aston Martin. Quite alarming from the Ferrari team. Positive, though, for Alpine in a way, because we have to remember that Jeddah is not the highest tyre degradation type circuit, and Ferrari, obviously, that is probably their biggest weakness with their car. So when we get to high deg circuits, if Alpine can look after their tyres well, I think Alpine could very soon be on the pace of Ferrari in 2023, certainly in the races. And then, yeah, other things to remark. Haas and AlphaTauri's pace was pretty decent. Alfa Romeo's pace was pretty poor, to be honest. And yeah, McLaren, 2.7 seconds per lap on average, they were slower than Red Bull. I cannot even describe to you how slow that is. I mean, this time last year at this same Grand Prix, it would have been obviously a lot better for McLaren. I think Lando Norris actually finished in 7th place in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2022. But for the majority of 2022, McLaren were probably a second and a half on average off the pace of Red Bull during a race. So to be at least a second a lap worse off is, very alarming. But they have got upgrades coming. If it can improve their car by, say, 0.8 to a second per lap, then they should be in a pretty decent position for the rest of the season. But yeah, the pace was incredibly poor. I know, obviously, Oscar Piastri had his tyres on from the end of lap 1, but yeah, Lando Norris on the mediums couldn't really do any better, to be honest. So, yeah, poor pace for McLaren, and yeah, bad days for McLaren as well. And before, actually, I go on to the next topic, which of course will be Aston Martin, just want to quickly get into my upcoming schedule, guys. So, yeah, this is the next 2 live streams on the channel. So, next live stream will be on Friday at 8 PM UK time. Again, the topic is to be confirmed. I will let you guys know what the topic will be on the morning of that stream. And then on Thursday, the 30th of March, which is in like 10 days from now, I'll be live once again, 8 PM UK time, for the 2023 Australian Grand Prix weekend preview. Yeah, not very long until we get into the race in Melbourne. Of course, a massively different time zone and timing for the race. And yeah, I will, on that same day, Thursday the 30th, I will let you guys know via my community tab on my homepage the timings and the schedule of my streams for that weekend. But yeah, those are the next 2 live streams. Of course, that Red Bull topic I just did has been recorded, so if you did miss part of it, it will be uploaded tomorrow at lunchtime, my time. And then, yeah, with the live stream on Friday, if the topic's good enough, then I'll probably upload that topic as a shorter video, maybe during the weekend or on the Monday, the, say, 27th. And of course, guys, do remember that this Sunday we go in the UK from GMT to BST, an hour forward. So, yeah, make sure to remember that. I will come to you guys, though, in the live chat before, obviously, the end of the stream. But what I want to get into now is Aston Martin and, well, just what happened with Aston Martin in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Now, of course, Fernando Alonso crossed the line in 3rd place, was on the podium, all was looking, well and good. And then he was given a 10-second post-race penalty for not serving his original 5-second penalty for not starting in his grid slot in the correct way. Yeah, it was for not serving that penalty correctly. Now, I'm just trying to quickly, on the FIA website, find the documents for the, find the documents for what happened. And then I'll try and get it up on the screen as well. So us guys can read through it. And I just need to remember how to display my screen again, because I've not done it in a while. So how do I do it again? Is it this? Oh, yeah. Is it that? I'm not sure whether it is that or not. Well, actually, no, it isn't, because that's not what I'm currently viewing. Sorry about this, guys, but yeah, I haven't done it in a while. There you go. So that's better. So let me now get it up, and you guys should be able to see this. Yeah, you should be able to see this now. So this is, firstly, let's get into the penalty itself and what the FIA punished Fernando Alonso for. So, obviously, for Alonso, failure to serve penalty during a pit stop, and that was a breach of Article 54.4 of the Sport and Regulations. 10-second penalty. Let's get into the reason. So, they say, car 14, Fernando Alonso, came into the pits during the safety car period to serve the 5-second penalty that was imposed on Alonso for being out of position on the grid. As is customary, race control, aided by the Remote Operations Centre in Geneva, examined whether Alonso served the penalty in accordance with the regulations. The stewards were informed that both race control and ROC, Remote Operations Centre, had determined that the penalty had been properly served. The stewards did not examine the matter further thereafter. Subsequently, at the last lap of the race, the stewards received a report from race control that they considered that the penalty was not properly served by Alonso, and they asked the stewards to investigate, and it's reported to race control. And then the stewards were shown video evidence of how Alonso served the penalty by the race director and the sporting director. They stated that what was agreed at the I don't know what SAC stands for, meetings with all the teams. I think those are the sporting regs type, or just sporting meetings that all the teams have, like once a month or something, or once every couple months. Was that no part of the car could be touched while a penalty was being served, as this would constitute working on the car. In this case, it was clear that the car was touched by the rear jack. Based on the representation made to the stewards that there was an agreed position that touching the car would amount to working on the car, the stewards decided to impose a penalty. I will admit the wording is not great. It really is not great, because, you know, it's that wording of, well, touching the car amounts to working on the car. That's a grey area, in my view at least, and in terms of maybe trying to get this regulation in its wording maybe altered, that is a grey area, because simply touching a Formula 1 car does not mean you are working on a Formula 1 car. Now, I know maybe that's what was agreed upon with the teams, that no part of the car could be touched while a penalty was being served, as they believed it would constitute working on the car. But when you really get into the nitty-gritty of it, that's not necessarily how it works. I can understand if you want to be a lot more final or black and white about it, that if you don't touch if you touch the car, it's a penalty in that instance, rather than having to determine, well, they touched the car, but did they actually do any work on it? But like I said, touching the car and working on the car are two different things. And that's not just with F1 cars, that's any car in the, on the entire planet. There is a difference between touching a car and working on a car. Now, let me just quickly hide that and go to go to the next document. So Aston Martin requested a right to review and basically protested the decision by the FIA. And the FIA then had this to respond to the right of review, which of course led to the eventual outcome. So here we go. So it says, the stewards received a letter dated 19th of March from Aston Martin with a petition for review pursuant to the Article 14 of the stewards panel decision to impose a 10-second penalty on Alonso for failing to serve the penalty properly. In support of the petition for review, the stewards were shown minutes of the latest team's meeting and video evidence of 7 different instances where cars were touched by the jack while serving a similar penalty to the one imposed on Alonso without being penalised. Now, that's key for Aston Martin and how they presented their argument, because it, on Aston Martin's side, it proves that there are instances in the past where, the car during a 5-second or 10-second serving penalty during a pit stop, during that period happening, the jack has touched the car, the rear jack, and it has not incurred a penalty in the past. And that was definitely a big thing for Aston Martin in getting this penalty overturned. Then it goes on to say the clear submission by the team was that the alleged representation of an agreement between the FIA and the teams that touching the car in any way, including with a jack, would constitute working on the car for the purposes of Article 54 of Sport and Regulations was incorrect, and therefore the basis of the steward's decision was wrong. So yeah, bit interesting that the submission by the team was the agreement that the FIA talked about in the previous document about touching the car would constitute working on the car. It's stated here that it was an alleged representation of an agreement. Tells me they didn't properly discuss this thing through and allowed grey areas to develop in a way. And then it goes on to say, in light of the petition, the stewards had to decide if there was a significant and relevant new element discovered, which was unavailable to the parties seeking the review. If there was such an element, that the stewards would need to consider whether the decision needed to be modified. Having reviewed the video evidence presented and having heard from the team representative Aston Martin and relevant members of the FIA, the stewards determined that there did exist significant and relevant new evidence to trigger a review. In particular, the video evidence and verbal evidence from the team and the FIA. It was clear to us that the substratum of the original decision, namely the representation of there being an agreement, was called into question by the new evidence. So like I said, bit of a... this really is an own goal by the FIA, because they've been dunked on really by the Aston Martin team, because it was claimed in the original document that penalised Fernando that there was an agreement in place with, touching the car constitutes working on the car, and it, eventually, once it was properly reviewed over again, they came to the conclusion that no, that is not necessarily what was agreed upon. So, yeah, very poor for the FIA. And they do say in this article, we therefore proceeded to hear the substance of the request for review. Having reviewed the new evidence, we concluded there was no clear agreement, as was suggested to the stewards previously, that could be relied upon to determine the parties had agreed that a jack touching the car would amount to working on the car without more. In the circumstances, we considered that our original decision to impose a penalty on Alonso needed to be reversed, and we did so accordingly. I think they've also come out and said, and I'll come away from that now, I think they've also come out and said that, that they will review and issue a clarification on that regulation, Article 54.4, before the Australian Grand Prix weekend. So, yeah, we should get an update on that. But eventually, Alonso was gifted his 100th career podium. And, yeah, very happy for him. He clearly deserved it. Even George Russell, who was awarded the podium for a bit, said he deserved it. And, yeah, great to see that he eventually got it. The only other thing that I want to get into before I come to your comments in the chat, guys, is a tweet. A brilliant tweet, I have to say, by Fernando Alonso. I'll have to go to my Twitter account to find it because I did quote tweet it. And I want to show you guys because it is quite funny. So, yeah, let me get it up here. And you can see, this is my tweet saying Giga Chad, because that's what Fernando is. And you can see, look, replying to George Russell. And this was his response. Let's first get into what Russell tweeted. So Russell yesterday tweeted, Fernando and Aston Martin deserve the podium today, but I'm very happy to pick up our first trophy of the season and super proud of the hard work the team is putting in. Let's keep pushing. Of course, at this point, the reversal of the penalty had not been announced. And then earlier today, Fernando tweeted this. Hola, And then these emojis, obviously you can notice the trophy and the back emoji, basically saying, yep, I'll have that back. Just such a brilliant tweet. And the picture as well. Just look at that. I just love this. You guys, if you don't have Alonso, if you're not following him on social media, you absolutely have to. Am I following him on social media? No, I'm not. Look at me. I'm an absolute slacker. There you go. Follow. Yeah, what a tweet. What a picture. And what a tweet. Yeah. Basically saying, yeah, cheers for that. Give me my trophy back because I'm actually on the podium. And I think he ratioed him as well. Yeah, he did. 180,000 likes. And he tweeted this about, 8 hours ago? I think, or 6 hours ago. And yeah, Russell got about 100,000 less likes. So, brilliant for Fernando. And yeah, that's why we love him, because he's a proper shithouse driver. But obviously, a legend of Formula 1. But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of everything I wanted to get into in tonight's stream. So let's now get into your comments in the live chat. So keep them all coming. I think what I will do quickly is I will do a quick poll in the chat. I'll ask you guys in regards to what we're talking about with Red Bull. Just ask you something quick. Do you think Red Bull will win every race? And obviously, I'll put the options there. Yeah, make sure to vote in that poll. Do you think Red Bull will win every race? Yes or no? I would probably still maybe slide no, because I think, eventually, surely they are going to have a day where they get it wrong, but it is very likely it could happen, and I'm sure you guys, may think differently. Right, yeah, let me go through all of your comments. So, Music Monster Man says, hey Chaz, that race was very good. If you thought it was, then great for you, but yeah, I didn't think it was great. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it was just an average race, really. Tandem says, Red Bull's pace was absolutely disrespectful considering it was mostly straight road. Yeah, I think it did. I think with this Red Bull car, to be honest, at the minute, I don't think it matters what track we're going to go to. They're going to be by far the quickest. Like I said, their car is great in every area. They've not got a weakness, really. Tandem says, I think that teams are closer to Red Bull qualifying trim because Red Bull focuses on building their car for the race, but I suspect they can make it even faster if they needed to. One thing that does help as well is because they've got such a pace advantage over everyone else, they can just focus really on setting the car up purely for the race. And then as long as they get the front row, which, I mean, they're going to do almost every race this season. Of course, they didn't do in Saudi Arabia only because of Verstappen's issue. Then their setup is just going to be perfect for the race. When, when things are a bit closer, sometimes you might say set your car up more for qualifying than the race. Paul James Squibbs, good to see you, mate, says, real contest I am intrigued by is Aston Martin versus Mercedes, especially Hamilton and Alonso fighting. Yeah, that is going to be a good fight this season, and once Mercedes improve their car, should be a great fight for second in the championship, and let's hope they can maybe win a race, the two teams this season. Rahul says Monaco or Budapest. Tandem says they may not win Monaco. Timmy says Ferrari wins Monaco. Yeah, I don't see that at all. I think Ferrari, the races they're more likely to win are places like Baku, Monza, places like that where you've got massively long straights, and I mean Baku tyre wear is a critical issue there, but you can kind of get away with it there if you've got like a ton of straight line speed, and same with Monza. So yeah, I don't see Monaco being a race that Ferrari can win. I think honestly in Monaco, I think Ferrari will probably be say 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th, kind of that area the whole weekend, given what their pace is like at the minute. But of course, you know, they'll be bringing upgrades probably before that race, so maybe they'll improve. Dayton Cooper says, I wouldn't be surprised if Red Bull wins every race, but I don't think they will. Too many variables and too many races. If both Red Bulls have to take grid penalties in Monaco, maybe. I mean, I don't think they'd ever do that, because they know they would absolutely have no chance of winning at that circuit. Because even if you are that much quicker than all the other teams, Monaco is that hard to overtake at. You won't be able to come through and get the dub. Paul James Squibb says, asks, what's happened at McLaren? They used to be one of the best teams. Did they lose all the top engineers at some point? They've just got these regulations wrong. That's what's happened. They've just designed a car that's it's just not aerodynamically efficient. It's got decent, or at least last year, it had decent or even good at times downforce, but very draggy. Very, very draggy. Completely opposite, basically, of what Red Bull have got. Where Red Bull have got good aero, good grip, but they're not too draggy. They've also got a very slippery car with how they've designed it, or how, you know, Adrian Newey has designed it. Make sure, by the way, guys, to smash the like button if you haven't already. Let's try and get the likes up on this stream to like 25 or 30 likes if we can before the end of the stream. Paul also says, from what I can gather, Aston Martin showed footage of other teams touching their cars with jacks whilst serving a 5-second penalty. Yeah. Yeah, that was really, as I just went through there, it was the key for Aston Martin in getting that penalty overturned. And also, another thing that Aston Martin could have pointed to get the penalty overturned is the fact that, I think it is in the regulations, that the stewards have to notify the team of a penalty, I think, within 25 minutes of the offence happening. So, I think is that how the rule is stated exactly? I'm not sure exactly, but they could have also led on that if they wanted to. No to saying, yeah, love the tweet. Jazza, yeah. Such a brilliant, legendary tweet. Robert Stellar says, I've read that it is the complaint made by Mercedes, who allegedly delayed making it, so Alonso had no opportunity to make up the time. It might be nonsense, of course. Yeah, I think it was towards the end of the race. Apparently, Mercedes mentioned to Russell that they mentioned to Russell that Alonso might get. They said, I think he might get a 5-second penalty. I didn't think they thought it'd be a 10-second penalty. So they, were asking, obviously, Russell to just keep the pace up so that they could gain from that if, of course, Alonso was penalised. But also, I saw another thing online that because the teams, after what happened at this actually same Grand Prix in 2021, where Red Bull and Mercedes were, radioing the FIA, demanding penalties for other teams, the direct rival, basically. The FIA put an end to that for 2022 onwards, so I think that's why Mercedes said that to George, in terms of, Alonso has committed this offence, we believe, because they couldn't tell the FIA about it because they're not allowed to, so they just made it known on the radio because they know the FIA monitors all of the radio transmissions anyway. So, yeah, a bit of a interesting way to get around it there, but I think Alonso, and even Russell said it after the race, that Fernando fairly deserved the podium. He was quicker. And Aston Martin have been quicker than Mercedes all season. So, yeah, he absolutely deserved to be in third But yeah, I'm pretty sure, Robert, that is true with the Mercedes thing there. And I think I'll end the poll, as we've had compared to the amount of viewers we've got. I think enough votes. About half the viewers of what we got. About 14 votes on the poll. Thank you guys for voting. I asked, do you think Red Bull will win every race? You guys think no. 71% of you think no. And 28% say yes. Again, it's a very hard thing at this point of the season still to tell, but it's worth asking the question because it's absolutely possible that they could win every single race this season. And if we go back to the race results, so Alonso, ended up 20 seconds behind by the end of the race. If, let's say, Red Bull led 1 and 2 and Alonso never got ahead of any of the Red Bulls into turn 1, Red Bull could have, the gap from them in first to the next non-Red Bull car in third, from lap 1 to lap 50, again, if they had been 1-2 for the whole race, the gap could have been 45, 50 seconds without, Verstappen having to come through, Perez having trouble with Fernando in the early laps, a safety car, and, that stuff. So 20 seconds doesn't look a lot, considering it was a 50-lap race, but I promise you guys, they have got a lot more pace in hand than we saw, over the course of the entire Grand Prix. And we saw it, didn't we, in the last 30 laps. So yeah, Alonso pretty lucky to be only 20 seconds off when, if Red Bull had not had the drive shaft issue with Verstappen, and Verstappen had started on pole for the race, and there wasn't a safety car, yeah, Fernando probably would have ended up about 40, 45 seconds off of the race winner. So, yeah, Red Bull, very dominant and way, way out in front. But, guys, that's pretty much it now for the stream and for all of the content regarding the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. So, thank you guys for coming along to all of it. And here is, again, the next 2 live streams on the channel. Friday night, this Friday, 8 p.m. UK time, I will be live, and I'll let you know, obviously, what the topic is going to be. I'll try and confirm within myself what type of topics I want to have a crack at this Friday. And then the next stream after that, as you can see on the bottom, the 2023 Australian Grand Prix weekend preview on Thursday the 30th of March, again live at 8 p.m. UK time, and we'll be kicking things off going into Australia. Obviously, the Australian weekend, I'm not going to be doing as many hours of content as I did for this weekend because of the timings of the sessions, it being on so early in the morning. And the majority of my audience is the UK and the US, so obviously I want to appeal to my audience base. So yeah, I'm not going to be doing as many hours of content, but I'm still going to be covering qualifying, of course, the race. Still be a 2-hour build up to the race and the usual race reaction after the Grand Prix. Obviously, qualifying watch along, qualifying preview I'll be doing on Friday night. Say, I don't know, like 10 hours before qualifying starts. So yeah, there'll still be plenty of content. And of course, just like tonight, the day after the race, a review of all of the big talking points from the Australian Grand Prix. Again, if you did miss me talking about the main topic here about Red Bull, make sure to check out the video that I'll upload tomorrow. About 15 minutes, I think it was, I spent on the topic. And yeah, I'll get that uploaded on the channel tomorrow at 12:30 UK time, 12:30 PM, of course. Make sure to check that out if you didn't get to catch all of it. But yeah, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Smash the like button, guys, if you haven't already on your way out. And don't forget as well to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 and join our Discord server, link below in the description for more content like this. But guys, until my next live stream on Friday and the next Grand Prix in Australia, and we'll be starting that content in 10 days for the Australian Grand Prix weekend preview, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.